Welcome to my latest jungle tier list for patch 15.5. We will take a look at the balance changes in the jungle and go over them to see who got weaker, perhaps stronger in this patch. Spoiler alert, I already looked at these changes and from a jungle perspective these aren't the greatest, more like they will have a really small impact on the meta. If you were following my jungle tier list videos, you would have a good idea of who the strongest champions are in this patch. Just to clarify any potential misunderstandings, this is a tier list for those below diamond. Below emerald tier list might be even better, so let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let's start with Mundo. He got a small buff, he has more HP now, which isn't a big deal. He won't become an S tier jungler because of this, but remains a decent option. Next will be Zed and a buff to his E. I'm not sure how much this will help, he's clear. For the lower ranks, he will remain one of the worst junglers in the game. If you really want to play an assassin, you have way better option, and even for high ranks, he is probably B tier at best. You really don't have any reason to pick Zed jungle in season 15. Ambessa also got a nerf, but you shouldn't play her in the jungle anyway. I know some people play her in the jungle as well, but she is a much better top laner. It's really not worth it making your own game harder and picking this champ as a jungler. The first actual jungle change was made to Elise. Riot has a really hard time trying to balance Elise support while not hurting Elise jungle too much. This patch you might think they got it right, but they really didn't. Support Elise will be affected by this change and of course jungle Elise as well. But like I said in my previous tier list video, the last change was a buff to jungle Elise and I think they overdid it. Because of that, she is S tier in the jungle, at least for the higher ranks. For most players, she remains an A tier jungler. She is really hard to carry with and it's super easy to mess up your combos with her. The problem is people are struggling to close out games the lower you go in ranks, so I really cannot place her that high on the tier list. If you're diamond and above, play her. She is super good, and if you really want to play her in plat, emerald or even gold, sure you can go ahead, but you will have a harder time carrying games than with something like Diana. Next we have Skarner. He lost some damage on his Q and the slow also got decreased, but his E cooldown got increased by 2 seconds. This champion can become A tier, maybe even S tier the higher you go with the ranks, but for most people he remains a B tier option. Not bad but not good either, and you will lack damage to carry your inting teammates. If you enjoy the tank playstyle, you should try champions like Mundo or Zac. They provide way more damage and carry potential in fights than Skarner alone if your damage dealers are behind or they are playing poorly. Let's be honest, they usually play badly. Next will be Yorick. It's really weird to talk about this champ in a jungle tier list, but here we are. The monster damage cap on his ult was reduced to 50 from 100. I don't find him to be a good jungler despite gaining more popularity recently. The last change was made to Poppy. Her HP growth was increased just like her passive shield. The damage on her E was also increased. I think that she is a really good jungler when picked against the right team comp. Probably a solid A tier jungler when the enemy team has a lot of dashes or jumps, which she can block with her W. You cannot blind pick this champ, she is more like a counter pick. But like I said, against the right team comp, the little Yoder is really good. Now let's see the actual tier list and my recommendations for patch 15.5 for Emerald and below as I said earlier. It shouldn't be a surprise that I put Mundo in S+ tier once again. He is super strong with his really good builds. Yasuo is often picked in the lower ranks or AD mid laners in general, so having an AP jungler on your team makes a lot of sense. All the Mundo items provide great defensive stats and a lot of damage as well, which leads to many solo kills when they try to match the said mummy. Just look to farm and only go for good ganks. If you are wondering how to become better at ganking, then I highly recommend checking out my video on how to gank. It will improve your ganks by a lot and it's basically a cheat sheet on how to kill the enemy laner with every gank you do in your games. Next will be Diana, and I made a short about this champion and her crazy good build. Basically, Bruiser Tank Diana is back and her stat check kit with the right itemization makes her a really scary pick. She is super strong and has an amazing clear, one of the fastest in the entire game. Same as Mundo, look to farm, get to 6, get as many resources as you possibly can and destroy your opponents. If you talk about destroying your opponents, then I have to mention Yorick. He is in a really good spot for these lower ranks and can only recommend him. I will make a build guide for him soon as well, so keep that in mind and subscribe if you haven't already. With the new Axiom Arc rune, you will heal even more than before, making it super easy to win any potential skirmish. But if you don't want to struggle with your first player and you prefer a good AD jungler, then your pick should be Nocturne. He is insanely good at fighting, has really good itemization, and he is a pick who pretty much always shines in the lower ranks, simply because his kit offers everything that's needed in these ranks. High sustain, high damage, and can easily delete enemy AD carries or any squishy person from the enemy team. In the S tier, we have somewhat weaker champions, but they still perform really well in the lower ranks. The problem with them is that they often lose to the champions in the S+ tier. They get outscaled, they have better ganks, but these are basically 50-50 matchups. The better jungler should always win whenever you are facing a Warwick as Volibear, for example, or Master Yi even beats Diana in a 1v1, but she offers better team fighting value and she scales better into the mid game even if she falls off compared to Yi later on. But don't get me wrong, you can solo carry games with any of the S tier champions and impact the game even early on in some cases if you play something like Nunu or Xin Zhao. Especially Nunu, who is amazing at taking objectives, and we have a lot of objectives to fight for in season 15. The A tier champions are different though, and they somewhat have the same problem as some of the B tier champions. Certain conditions have to be met in order to make them work, but I will talk about B tier champions in a second. Most of them are in the A tier not because they aren't able to carry games or their clear is slow. More like you have to be really good at someone like Viego to carry with him compared to something like Volibear or Nocturne. The timing is key with this champ, and don't get me wrong, it's important to work with Nocturne at the right time as well. But you are allowed to make more mistakes before you lose the game because of your mistakes. Meanwhile, with Viego, you are super squishy, he requires a lot of knowledge and struggles to compete with some of the other champions above him in this list because of bad execution. Elise, despite being in the A tier because Riot overshot her buff while trying to nerf Elise support, only becomes really good in the highest ranks. Without knowing how to close out games, which is a big issue in the lower ranks, you will often find yourself having 10 kills early on and still lose the game 20 minutes later. Because if you don't close the game out before 30 minutes even earlier, with this champ you become a minion for your team. Let's talk about B tier, because I don't think that someone like Grace is bad right now. But in a fair 1v1 he will lose to pretty much any champion on this list above him. His playstyle is really fun, but it's really hard as well. Like I said, AD mids are often picked in these ranks and people don't really think about picking CC either in the lower ranks, so you will struggle with ganks since you only offer damage. But if you are not ahead, you don't offer damage either. That's the problem with pretty much every champion in B tier. You either have to be really good at your champion in order to perform, or you won't be able to carry. If you compare Talia to Diana and how easy it is to execute teamfights with Diana compared to Talia, then it shouldn't be a surprise why she is only B tier while Diana is S tier. The other champions like Poppy, despite receiving a buff this patch, remain in B tier because she cannot be blind picked. She needs to see the enemy team before deciding that you want to go Poppy. She is the A tier and in some cases even S tier against the right comp. But in general, she is struggling. Same goes with Olaf. Unless the enemy team has a lot of CC, there is no reason to go Olaf instead of something like Udyr or Jarvan, etc. This wraps up my tier list for patch 15.5. I hope you found it helpful. If you are still watching, let me know if a tier list for Diamond and above would be requested as well, as I'm not sure how many of you are in Diamond or above. I know some of you, but most of my students are below Emerald. That's why I'm aiming at them with these tier list videos. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Every comment and like is very appreciated. Thanks for the support and thanks for watching. See you all in my next video.